Hi, I'm Byron Elton from CancerVax with today's cancer story. So delighted today to have Paul Chretien from Lincoln, Nebraska with us today. Welcome, Paul. So good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Byron.
So I have to say off the top, Chretien is not a typical Midwestern Cornhusker name. So you're clearly not from Lincoln, Nebraska. Tell us a little bit about where you were born and grew up.
Actually, I'm a Bostonian. I park my car in Harvard Yard with my mother and my father when I'm tired, and I eat yellow things called bananas.
Yeah, yeah.
You call them bananas. I call them bananers.
Bananas. Wicked,
Bananas. So when I
wicked, eh? Wicked.
yes, yes, yes. And so my kids, whenever I was tired, I'd say, go. Where's your mother? Go, go get a banana, and they'd say, go to sleep.
Well, Paul is wicked smart and delighted to have him. So, Paul and I met each other not too long ago, and I learned of his particular story. We should say up front that Paul is a physician by trade. And perhaps you could share with us, Paul, your particular area of expertise.
Okay, peds neuro or child neurology. So my client base was from prenatal through college. And the situations that I would cover would be birth defects, birth trauma, cerebral palsy, migraines, epilepsy, um, cancers, as a side, not primary, but I would be helping the oncologists. Um, but and migraines, the bread and butter was epilepsy first, and then it would be ADD, ADHD, school-related issues, cerebral palsy, and migraine. Those are the main things that I would deal with.
Gotcha. So you know your way around the hospital and you know your way around diseases and whatnot. And we should say off the top that we're lucky to be talking to you at all. I mean, there was a time when you didn't think you were going to be here. Paul's going to tell us a little bit more about his particular cancer journey, but I think it's safe to say there was a time when they would not have predicted that on in August of 2023 that you would look as good as you do and be talking to somebody about your story.
That is quite true. That is quite true. More than once, it didn't seem that I would be here, but with the grace of God
Here you
and
are.
and good health care and a lovely wife who makes great plant-based meals for me.
Good for you. Yeah, we're going to talk about your diet in a minute because I know that was an important part of your journey. So take us back to the when you first. I mean, obviously, you knew something was wrong. You were diagnosed. Kind of walk us through that.
Well, my diagnosis was in May of 2018, but I had known for several years that something was up. And as being a physician, you don't make time, I should say, to take care of yourself. Physician heal thyself is an old saying that we don't do enough. So I was having not consistently, but periodic bleeding and then change in bowel habits. And oh, it's a hemorrhoid. Oh, it's what I ate. Oh, I always poo-pooed it away. So, um, finally had my diagnosis in 2018 and stage 4 rectal colorectal cancer. Um, and let's put it this way. Um, it did not look good, but I went through the standard chemotherapy, and then radiation, and then I had the primary surgery of my nether regions, as Nethercott would say. um, and and that was takes us to January 2019. That's when my first surgery was. And then I had more radiation, and at that point, it was I mean, excuse me, more chemotherapy. That came as a shock, but I knew. The reason why the shock is that in the very beginning, of course, you say, "Oh, you have uh, chemotherapy and radiation and surgery, and you'll be fine."
Yeah.
Well, I didn't hear the mop up after surgery. And so I didn't have a port put in until after the surgery because the 6 months, I mean, I was a pincushion. I have horrible veins, and they just tore me apart. But anyway, I finally put the port in and did the and has been a blessing since then. Um, After that, I had the mop-up chemotherapy, and then in July of 2019, I was told, your scan is clear. You are doing fine. Come back in 9 months
Oh
or a
my God.
year. We'll come back the next year, like next March or something like that. And everything was fine. Meanwhile, I worked this entire time. I only took off what 4 weeks or 5 weeks for the surgery. But other than that, I worked the entire time I was being treated. Um, and then December 19th, that's what it was. Because it was just before Christmas. Maybe it was the 20 something. Anyway, just before Christmas in 2019, I had my first bowel obstruction. Um, and I go into, meanwhile, I should back up for a second. My CEA, which is a cancer embryonic antigen, which is a marker that they use, um, was a little elevated when I first presented. I think there was like, oh, 20. It was elevated, but it was low elevation, no more than 20. Um, and then in July, it was like down to like 3, which is fine. And so they said, you're fine. And then December, when I had my bowel obstruction, it's called small bowel obstruction. Um, my CEA, well, I went into my emergency room because I couldn't keep anything down. I couldn't. And I went first to get a liter of fluid because I figured I was just dehydrated. And next thing you know, they send me to the ER because they're closing. And I get into the ER, my ER where I work, my own hospital. And they do the x-ray and they say, come back. And as a colleague of mine says, uh, would you like to be hospice? Do you want to be DNR? You're stage 4 cancer. I said, excuse me, I just worked yesterday. Um, no. Um, but anyway, we solved that situation. But my CEA had gone up to 70 or 90. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but it had like tripled in titer. And the X-ray showed that my abdominal CT showed that I should say I was stage 4 in the beginning, and I had these two metastases in my left lobe of my liver. They told me in July they had cleared up. Um, anyway, I go. Meanwhile, the CT that evening, the two spots in my liver was the only thing that lit up, and they were 4 times larger than they had been back in 2018. Um, so I get admitted to the hospital, that gets taken care of, and then I have to have treatment again. And we're planning this treatment, and I get um, a second one within a month. I'm back in the hospital again for another excuse me, SBO, small bowel obstruction. At this point, it's uh, the surgeon who had not the primary surgeon, but the liver surgeon who had told me that everything was fine, comes back in while I'm in the hospital and says, "Oh, by the way, that scan in July, it really wasn't normal." And he showed me right here. You can see there's a blush there. That's the scan. The spots never really went away, and they came back with a vengeance, which is very common in cancer. That if it's partially treated, then like any inflammation, it comes back with a vengeance. Um, and he was saying, "Oh, what he planned to do," and da 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 da. And oh yes, we could take care of this. And meanwhile, Sherry, my wife, had done her due diligence, and everyone was telling her, not the physicians I worked with, but others, get him out of here. Take him, put him however you get him there tomorrow. Get him to Huntsman, and so
In Utah.
um, in Utah and Salt Lake. So what Sherry had done is she had uh, Googled cancer centers, you know, and there was Mayo, there was Huntsman, Sloan Kettering. Those are the three that came up. Um, and Huntsman being closer, plus, that was a recommendation from a colleague, a friend of hers, who's a physician. And so, meanwhile, which this doctor, my surgeon, um, he we tell him, oh, don't worry, we're going to Huntsman next, as soon as I get out of the hospital. And all of a sudden, he backtracked and, oh, that's a horrible thing to do. Blah 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 blah. I can take care of this. And so his ego got in the way, and it was like either that he was worried I was going to sue him for making a mistake, and I didn't care about that. So the kids pack up the house. Sherry and I hightail it to Huntsman, and we get there 1 week before. This is during COVID. 1 week before Huntsman shuts down anyone from California.
Oh,
But what we had done is we had moved from Sacramento to Boise, Idaho, to be closer, because instead of 12 hours away, it was only 6 hours away. And so we moved there to be with her brother and to commute. And that was an interesting time because it was the best of worlds and the worst of worlds. Because for the second time, I was dying. The first time, primary diagnosis, and then uh, the SBOs. Those were challenging, but I had two more surgeries because of that, and each time was like I didn't think I was going to die, but everyone around me thought I was going to die. But getting to Huntsman, we encountered a fantastic team between the nurses and the physicians, the clerical staff. It was just a beautiful place to be. They took very good care of me. I unfortunately um, I started immunotherapy as well as chemotherapy there, and there's something called there's panitumumab and what's the other one? Cetuximab. Um, Cetuximab, I think, is what they gave me first, which is it's made a chimera with a mouse. So it's part mouse and part human. And certain individuals react violently to it, and I did. I had the rigors, which not shaking. I couldn't stop shaking no matter what I did. They finally had to basically almost put me out
yeah.
in order to do that. So that was the first dose, and then the 2 weeks later, they gave me the second dose because figured, oh, well, we'll just get through this. The second dose. And that time I have a seizure. And so we abandoned that, you know. And but anyway, finished that therapy, did well, clear scan. That's 2020. So by August of 2020, I'm perfectly fine, except for the fact that those spots in my liver had gone down like maybe 80%, but they were still there. So what do you do? So Sherry again did her due diligence. Who's the best liver surgeon in the country? And UCSF came up once again, Sloan Kettering, and then Mayo. So you went to UCSF, Dr. Cabrera, and oh, wonderful surgeon. And once again, blessings, blessings, blessings. He was expecting like a 8 hour surgery. Well, the first blessing is there's two metastases. Rather than being on the right side of my liver, they're in the left side of my liver, in the left lobe. Most of the machinery is on the right, so I would have been toast. I would have been over. But on the left, you can remove that easily and without much, except for bleeding, and then it regenerates. So he had planned all this blood and time, and he got in and out in less than half the time he expected. And there was no blood. I mean, there's blood loss, but I did not need a transfusion. And he went in there. The only thing that I regret is that he fixed my hernia, but he removed my gallbladder. He said, "Oh, it was just hanging there in the way. I just got rid of it, so it won't bother you later." Anyway, so it just changed my stooling habit pattern because of the bile. It doesn't hold bile because it's not there. Anyway, so finish that, get back, and what happened after that? That's go back to Boise, and then we moved to Idaho Falls to be next to Sherry's dad, and I'm still commuting and not getting treatment, but getting surveillance at Huntsman. This is 221, 222. Everything is fine. And then, oh, beginning of 222, all of a sudden, two spots creep up in my lung. These are right along the lymph chain that comes straight up from the liver and from the gut through the liver to my chest, and two positive nodes. I had a biopsy uh, endoscopically, and it was the cancer. So, ah, what do you do? Went through chemotherapy again.
We should point out at this point that while they've gotten a lot better at it, for a long time, traditional has been those three things, which you've done multiple times: surgery, chemotherapy, and
Mm,
radiation.
right.
And
It has gotten a lot better.
I'm sorry?
It has gotten a lot better. In fact, I chose for my radiation this time, I chose uh, photon therapy instead of proton therapy. I mean, proton instead of photon therapy. Photon, which is regular X-ray or radiation, sends a broad beam and just passes through and kills anything in its path. And they try to target whatever they're trying to target. Um, proton is a narrow beam that just targets where you're going, and with a pencil beam, it targets the area. But anyway, yes, in the old days, that's all we had was chemo, immunotherapy, and radiation, which I've done all three. I still have two little spots that are hanging out there. And I just received a CEA yesterday, and my CEA is up again. So I am in the best health I've been in 10 years, and I have a time bomb ticking right here. So anyway, that's the broad strokes of my story.
That's your story. Now, I was saying that it's interesting, and clearly my area of expertise is not medical, but in looking at all this, there's a lot of really interesting work being done to find alternative ways to treat medicine. Cancer Vax, by the way, preclinical, is looking for a better way to treat cancer beyond the surgery, the chemo, the radiation. And I went through it with my prostate cancer, right? I never did the chemo, but I did the surgery. I did the radiation when they found they didn't quite get it all. And it
Mhm.
was, one, it was life changing. Secondly, I'm, cancer free at this point. But it's been really fascinating to look. In our case, we're working with people at UCLA, which ironically, I still am under the care of the UCLA people doing phenomenal work. And they're looking to develop a vaccine, along with a lot of other people, by the way, not preventative, but as a treatment that would hopefully forego the traditional surgery, chemo. And, in its simplest form, and listen, I'm a layman, right? So the way it was described to me is I said, well, tell me about chemotherapy. And say, well, the chemotherapy kills cancer cells. It also kills a lot of other things.
Mhm.
And we hope that we kill the cancer before we kill you, right?
Exactly.
There's got to be a better way to approach this stuff. Unfortunately, there's some really good work being done. Now, there's one other element to your story that I think bears talking about, and I don't know the details around it, but you radically changed the way that you eat and whatnot. How did that all happen? And what impact has that had on your overall health and kind of longevity?
Well, there's three parts to it. The first part is how did it happen? And that is that my brother-in-law had gone my father-in-law has he's 89 years old. He has an aortic valve that was put in when he was 79, right, almost 10 years ago. And so that's when my brother-in-law realized that, okay, now there's this heart history in the family. So he went off of meat and went through 15 different diets before he came to plant-based, whole food plant-based, not vegan, not vegetarian, but step above vegan, which is whole food plant-based. And so he had already done that. And then for health reasons, just for health, Sherry, my wife, started doing it. And the as soon as and of course because she's the primary food maker, um, I went along. I was never a great beef or meat eater anyway, but I love fish. Growing up in Boston, I just love fish. Um,
Clam
but
chowder.
clam chowder, not
Chowder.
Manhattan, but New England clam chowder.
That's right.
And and so when I got the diagnosis, it was like, okay, first of all, Sherry said, if you die, I will kill you. And then and then she said, okay, we're going to eat this way from now on. Okay. And I dragged my feet a little bit, and I was like, oh, maybe 50-50, then 80-20, then 95-5. And depending on the time, I'm either 95-5 or 99-1. Because I do cheat every once in a while. And what I cheat with is not with meat, but with sugar. That's a big problem with it's the ACA, American Cancer Academy, or Society rather, has come out that sugar as well as processed meats are really carcinogenic, among many other things. But I'm addicted to sugar. But how did it affect me? It's it's really helped with overall energy, help with cleansing my body, clarity of thought, and also with dealing my system and my body tolerating chemotherapy. I had very few problems other than with the immunotherapy with panitumumab, no, the cetuximab rather. Uh, Other than that, um, I had very few side effects. Very few, and every time he told me, I got it minimal. So I know that um, part of my health and staying healthy through this is not challenge my body with all the hormones and all the additives and all the other things that we put in our food system, especially with processed foods and with meat.
Yeah.
You know, so um, and it's been a blessing. It's been really good. I really can't say that every meal I've enjoyed. In fact, there's one period where Sheriff said, "Oh, Brian said," that's her brother. "Oh, da 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 da." Da." I said, "I don't care what Brian says. Please don't make that again."
Well, that's good. Well, you mentioned, utilizing the body's natural immunotherapies system and whatnot. And
Mhm,
much of what's being done, particularly with vaccine treatments and whatnot, and research, is to really utilize the body's natural immune system to help
mhm,
identify and hunt these cancer cells down. And you probably more than anybody else have seen the magic and the real power of our body to heal itself given the opportunity. So, for instance, fasting is something that anciently people have done to
mhm,
uh, to give their body time and not bothering it with all this other digesting food and working on other stuff, and saying, listen, give your body the ability. Animals do it naturally. They get
uh-huh,
sick and they don't eat, or you'll see them eating grass, right? They need the chlorophyll and whatnot. But there's something magical. There's something I should say powerful, not magical, about allowing the body to heal itself with proper nutrition, with proper attention and whatnot. And there just has to be a better way than going in and opening people up and taking stuff out and introducing poisons into the system with chemotherapy and
mhm,
radiation. And listen, all very noble causes, but how wonderful it is to be at a time when there's really some really fantastic research being done. Hopefully, a time when guys like you and I are not going to have to go through what we did. And you've mentioned your
Right.
wife 2 or 3 times, Chai, right? The other
Yes.
people that are really affected by this are the people that are closest to us, right? They've got to deal with the uncertainty of, geez, is he going to be around? I mean, how much time do we have? Is this a time management situation?
Mhm.
And so the other thing is, second leading cause of death globally. And I dare say, since I've been involved in this field from a marketing standpoint, and I've never run into anybody that hasn't been able to say, "Oh yeah, in my family, or me personally, or a dear friend, or somebody that I know." I've never run into anybody who says, I never knew anybody that had cancer. At some point, everybody's lives get touched by it. So,
Mhm. That's true. That's true. And the fasting, you mentioned the fasting that we we have done. Sherry and I have done the fasting, the formal fasting. I don't know if I should say it on here, what the name of the company we used,
Prolon.
but the Prolon,
And by the
Prolon.
way, developed by UCLA scientists.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
well, the one guy, what's his name? Longo, I think it is, the Italian
Yeah.
guy.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Dr.
Yeah,
Longo.
he's a UCLA guy. So we're
That's
happy.
right.
We're
Yeah.
happy to any shout out we can give to UCLA because that's the research that we're funding.
Right. But the fast also helped in dealing with the chemotherapy and staying healthy,
Yeah,
and taking a break, as you said, and actually cleansing.
yeah,
And Sherry's actually done it several times on her own because she's had some other health issues, not cancer, but and it's really helped with the inflammation, especially with her broken knee,
yeah.
which it's what you do.
Yeah, that's
You do
right.
the best you can.
Well, listen, we all know and we hope that there's better approaches than surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. The body is a miracle.
Hmm.
Exercise, sleep, helping other people, good mindset, eating good food, all of that
Hmm.
stuff comes into it, and hopefully, some really great work will come out, or some great results will come out of the work that's being done. Well, we've been talking to Paul Chretien from Lincoln, Nebraska, originally from Boston, Massachusetts, telling his story. And got to say, Paul, first of all, so delighted that you're able to take some time with us. And very at this point, you look great. So whatever you're doing, keep it up.
I will. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Good to
thank you
speak
so
with
much
you.
for having us.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Take care.